Imagine gunfire exploding through quiet streets, a cop bleeding out on the pavement, and one man charging straight into the bullets with his dog at his side. What happens next will shock you. Number's single dad ran into gunfire to save a cop. What he and his dog did shocked the entire police force. In the chaos of gunfire echoing through downtown streets, terrified citizens scrambled for cover. One man inexplicably ran straight into the line of fire. On the blood-stained concrete, a female police officer lay crumpled, crimson spreading across her bulletproof vest. No one dared approach, but he did, alongside his loyal German shepherd, racing forward to drag her to safety. The entire city witnessed it. The whole police department stood stunned. A mechanic father had done what even trained officers hesitated to do. But why would a regular guy risk everything? Keep watching to find out. Nathan Carter had never imagined his Saturday morning would unfold like this. At 36, the former Marine had built a quiet life in Boston suburbs, far from the violence that once defined his days. His powerful frame, standing 6 feet tall with muscles from years of military service, moved with ease through his auto repair shop each day. Sun-weathered skin and short brown hair framed eyes that held depths of experience, gray-blue orbs that had seen too much, lost too much. A faint scar ran along his left shoulder, a reminder of Fallujah, though that wasn't the wound that hurt most. 3 years had passed since cancer stole Sarah from him. 3 years since he'd held his wife's hand as she slipped away in a sterile hospital room. Her once vibrant spirit finally surrendering to the disease. He traded his dress blues for coveralls that day, walking away from a military career that suddenly meant nothing without her to come home to. The only thing that mattered now was Astrid, their daughter, 8 years old with her mother's honey blonde hair, and those same striking blue eyes that could shift from laughter to concern in a heartbeat. Astrid was everything. Smart beyond her years, she devoured comic books and fantasy novels with equal enthusiasm, often reading to Rex, their 5-year-old German shepherd, as if he understood every word. Perhaps he did. The dog had come into their lives shortly after Sarah's death, a puppy Nathan had adopted from a shelter, thinking Astrid needed something to love that wouldn't leave her. Rex had grown into 70 pounds of loyalty and protection. His black and tan coat gleaming with health, his intelligent eyes always tracking Astrid's movements. Their neighborhood in Dorchester had changed in recent years. Once a working-class haven where everyone knew their neighbors, it had become unstable. The Iron Vulture's motorcycle gang had expanded their territory, bringing drug deals and violence to streets where children once played freely. Trust in law enforcement had eroded after several scandals involving corrupt officers, leaving residents caught between criminals who ruled the night and police they no longer believed in. Officer Amanda Blake understood that mistrust better than most. At 32, she'd spent 8 years fighting crime and corruption with equal fervor, earning commendations for her arrests and enemies for her refusal to look the other way. Her angular face, framed by dark brown hair always pulled back in a regulation bun, bore the determined expression of someone who'd chosen the harder path. The small scar on her chin came from a dealer's knife 2 years ago. He tried to bribe her first, then tried to kill her when she'd refused. She'd arrested him with blood still dripping down her neck. Her current assignment had consumed 6 months of careful investigation. The Iron Vultures weren't just dealing drugs anymore. Intelligence suggested they'd moved into arms trafficking, somehow acquiring police-grade weapons that should have been destroyed. Someone inside the department was feeding them information and equipment. Amanda had volunteered to go undercover, knowing her reputation as a straight arrow made her the least likely to be suspected as the investigator. The morning started like any other for Nathan and Astrid. They walked to the farmer's market 3 blocks away, Rex padding alongside them without a leash. He never needed one. Astrid chatted about her latest book, something about dragons and knights, while Nathan half listened, his mind on the transmission job waiting at the shop. The autumn air carried hints of coming winter, and he made a mental note to buy Astrid a new coat soon. Sarah would have already had one picked out by now. They were passing the old parking garage on Hancock Street when everything changed. The sharp crack of gunfire split the morning calm, followed by screams and the sound of running feet. Nathan instinctively pushed Astrid behind him as people fled past them, their faces masks of terror. Through the chaos, he saw her, a police officer down on the asphalt, trying to crawl behind a parked car while crimson spread across her left shoulder. Two figures in black moved through the shadows of the garage, weapons raised. The officer's service weapon lay feet away where she dropped it, her hand pressed desperately against the wound. Nathan's military training kicked in, his mind calculating angles, distances, threats. But stronger than training was Astrid's small hand in his, her voice trembling as she whispered words that would change everything. "Dad, we have to help her." The words hit him like ice water. His daughter, seeing someone in danger, expected him to act, expected him to be the hero she'd always believed him to be. Nathan's chest tightened as memories flooded back. Sand and heat, the weight of a rifle, the faces of men he'd served with who hadn't made it home. He'd left that world behind, promised himself he'd never again put himself in danger because Astrid needed him whole and alive. But the officer was dying. He could see it in how her movements grew sluggish, how the pool of blood expanded. The shooters were repositioning, preparing to finish what they'd started. And his daughter was watching him, waiting to see what kind of man her father really was. But here's where it gets insane: the hero becomes the suspect. How does that happen? Stay tuned. Nathan spotted the corner store 20 feet away, its owner, Margaret Wilson, peering anxiously through the window. He made his decision in a heartbeat, scooping Astrid up. He ran to the store, practically throwing her inside. "Call 911, he told Margaret, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Keep her safe. Don't let her watch." Before Astrid could protest, before his rational mind could stop him, Nathan was running. Not away from the gunfire, but straight toward it. The distance to the wounded officer felt both endless and instantaneous. Nathan's boots pounded against asphalt as Rex surged ahead, the dog's instincts aligning with his master's intent. A bullet whined past Nathan's ear so close he felt the heat of its passage. Another sparked off the concrete inches from his knee, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not when he could see the officer's eyes, brown and desperate, fixed on him with a mixture of shock and hope. Rex reached her first, positioning himself between the officer and the shooters, his deep bark echoing off the buildings. The sound was primal, threatening, the voice of a predator protecting its pack. For a crucial second, the gunfire paused. Whether from surprise or the need to reload, Nathan didn't know or care. He slid the last few feet on his knees, ignoring the skin tearing through his jeans, and grabbed the officer under her arms. "I've got you," he said, though he wasn't sure she could hear him over Rex's continued barking and the resumed gunfire. She was heavier than expected, the vest, the equipment belt, dead weight from blood loss. Nathan's muscles, still conditioned despite 3 years of civilian life, strained as he dragged her backward toward the cover of a delivery truck. A bullet caught his upper arm, tearing through jacket and flesh with burning intensity. Nathan grunted but didn't stop moving, using his body to shield the officer as they moved. Rex darted back and forth, unpredictable and fierce, keeping the shooter's aim disrupted. 20 feet. 15, 10. Finally, blessed cover as they rounded the truck's bulk. Nathan immediately shrugged off his jacket, pressing it hard against the officer's shoulder wound. Her eyes were glazing, shock setting in. "Stay with me," he commanded, falling back on combat first aid training. "Look at me." "What's your name?" "Blake," she managed. "Amanda Blake." "Okay, Amanda, you're going to be fine. Help's coming." He could already hear sirens approaching. His own arm throbbed, blood seeping through his shirt, but it could wait. The shoulder wound was the priority. He maintained pressure while using his free hand to check for other injuries, professional and calm despite the chaos around them. The shooters had fled at the sound of sirens, vanishing into the maze of back alleys they obviously knew well. Rex returned to Nathan's side, alert but no longer aggressive, his muzzle stained with foam from barking. Security cameras from 3 different buildings had captured everything: Nathan's desperate run, his shielding of Amanda, Rex's fearless intervention. When the first patrol cars screamed onto the scene, Nathan thought the danger was over. He was wrong. The responding officers saw a blood-covered civilian crouched over one of their own. They saw Rex, hackles still raised, teeth bared at anyone who approached too quickly. They saw what they expected to see, threat, not hero. Weapons drawn, they ordered Nathan to step away from Amanda, to get on the ground, to control his dog. "I'm trying to help her," Nathan said, not moving his hands from the compress. "She's lost a lot of blood." The shooters went east through the alley. But Sergeant Dante Cross, the shift commander who'd arrived with the second wave of units, wasn't interested in Nathan's version of events. Tall and lean with meticulously styled blonde hair and cold gray eyes that never seemed to blink, Cross had the look of someone who decided guilt before asking questions. His pale complexion and sharp features gave him an almost predatory appearance as he studied the scene. "Secure the civilian," Cross ordered. "Get that dog controlled, and somebody get Blake to the hospital." Paramedics finally reached Amanda, taking over from Nathan with professional efficiency. As they loaded her onto a gurney, she tried to speak, to tell them Nathan had saved her, but Cross wasn't listening. His attention was fixed on Nathan, studying him with an intensity that made Nathan's military instincts scream danger. The next hours became a nightmare of procedure and suspicion. Nathan was taken to the station, his arm treated quickly by an EMT before he was placed in an interview room. Rex was removed by animal control despite Nathan's protests, destined for a quarantine facility until his threat level could be assessed. Worst of all, Astrid was taken into protective custody by Child Protective Services, the trauma of seeing her father arrested compounding her fear. Margaret Wilson, the store owner who sheltered Astrid, had tried to explain what she'd witnessed, but her statement was filed away without seeming interest. The narrative was already being written, and it didn't include civilian heroes. In the stark interview room that smelled of burnt coffee and desperation, Nathan faced Cross across a metal table scarred by years of similar confrontations. Cross's questioning style was psychological warfare, long silences, repeated questions, implications wrapped in seemingly casual observations. Former Marine, Cross noted, reading from Nathan's file. Combat experience. PTSD diagnosis after discharge. Lost your wife 3 years ago. That's a lot of trauma, Mr. Carter. Sometimes trauma makes people do unexpected things, like save a police officer. Nathan kept his voice level, recognizing the interrogation tactics. Like being in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. "You know what I find interesting?" Cross leaned back, his expensive watch catching the fluorescent lights. The Iron Vultures knew exactly where Officer Blake would be. That was supposed to be a confidential surveillance position. So either we have a leak in the department, or someone on the outside knew about the operation. I was taking my daughter to the farmer's market. Check the security footage from every Saturday for the past year. Same route, same time. Cross smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. Convenient. A routine that puts you right where you needed to be. 2 younger officers, Liam Morrison and Finn Walsh, watched through the observation window. Both in their early 30s, they joined the force with ideals about justice that 5 years on the job hadn't quite crushed. They exchanged troubled looks as Cross continued his aggressive questioning. "This doesn't feel right," Liam muttered. He was stocky and earnest with red hair that refused to stay regulation length. The guy ran into gunfire. His dog protected Blake. Why are we treating him like a suspect? Finn, taller and darker with the build of a runner, shook his head. Cross has been weird about this whole Iron Vultures investigation. Remember when those weapons went missing from evidence? He shut down questions real fast. Meanwhile, Amanda Blake was fighting her own battle. She'd woken in the hospital to find her department treating her rescuer as a potential accomplice. Despite the pain medication clouding her thoughts and the doctor's orders to rest, she demanded access to a computer and began her own investigation. Nathan Carter's service record told a story of honor and sacrifice, multiple commendations, a Bronze Star for pulling 3 wounded Marines from an ambush in Afghanistan. He'd left the military not because of PTSD, as Cross suggested, but to care for his dying wife. His financials showed a man living paycheck to paycheck, putting every spare dollar into Astrid's college fund. The garage where he worked gave him glowing references: honest, skilled, never missed a day except when Astrid was sick. This wasn't a criminal. This was a hero being railroaded. And wait until you hear who the real villain is. It's closer than you think. Amanda's investigation took a darker turn when she accessed the Iron Vulture's file. The gang's expansion coincided precisely with several evidence room discrepancies. Weapons logged as destroyed had surfaced, registration numbers that matched those recovered from gang arrests. Someone inside was arming them, and that someone had known about her surveillance position. She thought about Cross's behavior at the scene, how quickly he'd moved to isolate Nathan, how he dismissed witness statements. A terrible suspicion formed, one that made her shoulder wound seem trivial by comparison. At the garage, crime scene techs processed Nathan's workspace with unnecessary thoroughness. They were looking for evidence of gang connections, drug residue, anything to support Cross's theory. What they found instead was a listening device, professional grade, hidden under Nathan's workbench. Constance Hale from Internal Affairs arrived within an hour. At 40, she had the worn efficiency of someone who'd seen too much corruption to be surprised by anything. Her dark hair pulled back severely framed a face that gave away nothing as she examined the device. "This is department issue," she said quietly to her partner. "Serial number matches our inventory. The question is who signed it out, and why it's here." The investigation's focus shifted, though Nathan remained in custody. Constance's team traced the device's authorization. It had been signed up by Cross 6 weeks ago for an authorized surveillance that didn't appear in any official files. The ammunition that had struck Amanda matched a lot reported stolen from the evidence room, a theft Cross had personally investigated and declared unsolvable. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture of corruption that reached deeper than anyone wanted to admit. Nathan had been held for 48 hours when Amanda, against medical orders, discharged herself from the hospital and arrived at the station. Her left arm was immobilized, her face pale from blood loss, but her eyes burned with determination. "I need to speak with Sergeant Cross," she told the desk officer about the Nathan Carter case. Cross appeared within minutes, his expression carefully neutral. "Officer Blake, you should be recovering. Nathan Carter saved my life. I'm prepared to testify to that. I'm also prepared to testify that my surveillance position was known only to 3 people, myself, Lieutenant Morrison, and you." Something flickered in Cross's eyes, calculation, perhaps a hint of concern. "You're obviously still affected by trauma, Blake. Perhaps you should. Perhaps I should talk to Internal Affairs about the weapons missing from evidence, about how the Iron Vultures always seem to know our moves, about that listening device found in Mr. Carter's garage." The station had gone quiet, officers pretending to work while straining to hear the confrontation. Cross's face had taken on an unhealthy flush, his composure cracking. "Be very careful, Blake. Accusations like that can end careers." "Yes," Constance Hale said, appearing as if summoned. "They certainly can." She held up a folder marked with IA's seal. "Sergeant Cross, I'm going to need you to come with me. We have some questions about your financial records, specifically the $50,000 deposited into an offshore account linked to your wife's maiden name." What followed was the systematic dismantling of a corruption network that had operated for 2 years. Cross had started small, looking the other way on minor arrests in exchange for cash. But Leon Marshall, the Iron Vulture's leader, had seen opportunity. He'd offered Cross a partnership that graduated from protection money to active collaboration, including supplying weapons and intelligence. Amanda had been getting too close to the truth. Her surveillance of the gang's weapons depot threatened to expose not just the Iron Vultures but Cross's involvement. The hit on her had been meant to look like a gang incident, with Nathan positioned to take the fall as either an accomplice or unfortunate collateral damage. Cross had been monitoring Nathan for weeks, knowing his routine, knowing exactly when to strike. But they hadn't counted on Nathan's instincts or Rex's ferocity. They certainly hadn't anticipated Amanda's survival and determination. The raid on the Iron Vultures came 3 days later. Nathan, finally released, had volunteered to help. His knowledge of urban combat and Rex's tracking abilities proving invaluable. The operation centered on a warehouse complex near the harbor, where intelligence suggested the gang stored their weapons and cash. Rain pounded the metal roofs as tactical teams moved into position. Nathan, wearing a borrowed vest, guided Constance's team through the maze of containers. Rex, finally released from quarantine, worked with Liam to clear potential ambush points. The dog's senses were sharper than any technology, alerting to hidden gang members before thermal imaging picked them up. Cross was there too, having arranged to meet Leon to warn him about the impending raid, a final act of betrayal that Constance had anticipated. Wearing a wire, Cross became the star witness against himself as he laid out the entire conspiracy to Leon, warning him to move the weapons before dawn. When the floodlights blazed and sirens wailed, chaos erupted. Leon's men scattered, but Rex had already marked their escape routes. His barking guided teams to fleeing suspects while Nathan's tactical knowledge helped coordinate the encirclement. In the end, 17 gang members were arrested along with enough weapons to arm a small militia. Cross's expression when Constance personally arrested him was one of disbelief melting into resignation. The game was over, and everyone knew it. The trial that followed became a sensation. Evidence from Cross's communications, financial records, and the wire recording created an airtight case. Prosecutor Evelyn Torres, known for her tenacity, methodically presented how a sworn officer had betrayed his oath for profit, endangering fellow officers and civilians alike. Amanda testified about her investigation, her voice steady as she described the attack and Nathan's intervention. Security footage played on courtroom screens, showing Nathan's heroic run through gunfire, Rex's fearless protection, the desperate first aid that had saved her life. When Nathan took the stand, the courtroom was silent. He spoke simply about that morning, taking his daughter to the market, seeing someone in danger, making a choice. When asked why he'd risked his life for a stranger, his answer resonated beyond the courtroom. My daughter was watching. She needed to know that when someone needs help, you don't calculate the risk, you act. That's what makes us human. Cross received 25 years for corruption, attempted murder, and weapons trafficking. Leon Marshall got life without parole. 17 other conspirators received various sentences. The case triggered a massive reform of the Boston Police Department's evidence handling procedures and internal oversight. Nathan received the Citizens Medal of Valor from the mayor, though he looked uncomfortable in his borrowed suit as cameras flashed. What meant more was Astrid in the front row, beaming with pride, Rex sitting perfectly still beside her. Despite the crowd, the city had found an unlikely hero in a grieving mechanic who just wanted to raise his daughter in peace. The garage where Nathan worked saw business triple as grateful citizens brought their cars to the man who'd restored their faith in everyday courage. Nathan hired 2 assistants to handle the overflow, creating jobs in a neighborhood that desperately needed them. He also began teaching free self-defense and first aid classes at the community center, skills he insisted everyone should have. Rex became a certified therapy dog with Astrid as his junior handler. They visited hospitals and schools, Rex's calm presence and Astrid's enthusiasm bringing comfort to those who needed it. The girl who'd lost her mother had found purpose in helping others heal. Amanda became a regular visitor to the Carter household. Initially, she came to thank Nathan, then to check on his recovery, then simply because she enjoyed their company. She taught Astrid chess and card games that sharpened strategic thinking. She helped Nathan with the bureaucracy of victim compensation claims. Slowly, without either quite planning it, she became part of their routine. There was something healing in their shared experiences. Amanda understood loss, having lost her partner in a shooting 5 years prior. Nathan understood the weight of survival, the guilt that came with being the one who walked away. Together, they found a balance, each filling gaps the other didn't know existed. 6 months after the shooting, Boston Common was painted gold by autumn sunset. Astrid ran ahead with Rex, the 2 chasing fallen leaves while early evening joggers smiled at their enthusiasm. Nathan and Amanda walked slower, a comfortable silence between them that had replaced the need for constant conversation. I never thanked you properly, Amanda said suddenly, her recovered arm brushing against his. Not just for saving my life, for believing in justice when the system failed, for showing Astrid that integrity matters. Nathan glanced at her, noting how the setting sun caught the amber flecks in her brown eyes. You fought for me when everyone else assumed the worst. That's thanks enough. No, Amanda said, stopping their walk. It's not. She turned to face him fully, her expression serious but soft. Nathan, these past months, I came to your house to thank a hero, but I stayed because I found a family. You, Astrid, even Rex, you've given me something I didn't know I was missing. Nathan's hand found hers, calloused fingers intertwining with her smaller ones. The touch was answer enough, but he spoke anyway. Sarah would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who could challenge me, keep me honest, someone who could love Astrid as much as she did. And do I? Amanda asked, though they both knew the answer. Astrid had started calling her Aunt Mandy, then just Mandy, and lately, sometimes carefully, Mom. You know you do, Nathan said, pulling her closer. Around them, Boston continued its evening routine, but in their small circle of connection, time seemed to pause. Astrid had noticed them stopping and ran back, Rex at her heels. She looked at their joined hands, at the way they stood close enough to share warmth, and her face lit with a smile that could have powered the city. Are you guys finally going to get married? She asked with 8-year-old directness. Because Rex and I have been waiting forever. Amanda laughed, the sound bright against the autumn air. Nathan shook his head, smiling despite himself. We should probably date first, kiddo. Dating's for people who don't know each other, Astrid declared. You already know each other. Mandy knows you put too much sugar in your coffee and leave your socks everywhere. You know she sings in the shower and can't cook anything except eggs. Rex knows she gives him treats when you're not looking. What else is there? As if in agreement, Rex barked once, tail wagging as he looked between the 3 humans who'd become his pack. The German shepherd who'd charged into gunfire seemed to understand that the real victory wasn't in the violence prevented but in the family preserved and expanded. Amanda knelt to Astrid's level, her voice serious. How would you feel about that? If your dad and I, if we became a real family? Astrid threw her arms around Amanda's neck, nearly knocking her over. I already picked out my dress for the wedding. It's blue like Mom's was. Dad showed me pictures. She would want him to be happy. She would want me to have someone who reads to me and teaches me chess and makes Dad smile again. Nathan joined the embrace, his strong arms encompassing both of them while Rex pressed against their legs, completing the circle. In that moment, on an ordinary path in Boston Common, a new family solidified. Not born from conventional beginnings but forged in crisis, tested by injustice, and strengthened by choice. The sun dipped below the skyline, painting the city in shades of amber and rose. They walked home together, Astrid between Nathan and Amanda, their hands linked over her head while she swung between them. Rex trotted ahead, alert as always but relaxed, knowing his people were safe. The garage, the badge, the memories of violence and loss, none of it disappeared, but it transformed, became foundation rather than weight. Nathan still worked on cars but now also taught veterans how to transition to civilian life. Amanda still wore the uniform but with renewed faith in the justice it represented. Astrid still missed her mother but had learned that love multiplies rather than replaces. 3 months later, on a clear winter morning with snow dusting the courthouse steps, Nathan Carter and Amanda Blake exchanged vows in a simple ceremony. Astrid stood as maid of honor, Rex as ring-bearer with the rings tied to his collar. Liam and Finn were groomsmen, Constance and Margaret among the small gathering of witnesses. The judge who performed the ceremony was the same one who'd presided over Cross's trial, and she smiled as she pronounced them husband and wife. From chaos, courage. From injustice, truth. From loss, love renewed. May your union be as strong as the character you've both displayed. As they kissed, Astrid and Rex both barked, one with laughter, one with joy. And the photographer captured a moment that would later hang in their living room. A father who'd run toward danger, a mother who'd fought for truth, a daughter who'd never lost faith, and a dog who'd protected them all. Behind them, through the courthouse windows, Boston stretched out under winter sun, a city where one moment of courage had rippled outward, touching lives and rebuilding faith in ways no one could have predicted. The mechanic who just wanted quiet had found purpose. The cop who'd fought alone had found partnership. The girl who'd lost her mother had found family multiplied. And the German shepherd who'd charged into gunfire had found his pack complete and protected. Sometimes heroes wear capes. Sometimes they wear badges or uniforms. But sometimes they wear oil-stained coveralls and just want to take their daughter to the farmer's market. Nathan Carter was all of these and none of them, simply a man who'd chosen courage when it mattered most, and in doing so had discovered that the greatest rescue wasn't pulling someone from danger but building something worth protecting from the ashes of loss. As the small wedding party dispersed into the winter morning, Astrid tugged on Nathan's hand. "Dad, does this mean Rex gets another medal for being the best ring bearer?" Nathan laughed, scooping her up despite her protests that she was too big for such things. "I think Rex has earned all the medals he needs. He's got his family. That's worth more than all the recognition in the world." Amanda leaned against Nathan's shoulder, her wedding ring catching the light. "Speaking of family, there's something we should probably tell you, Astrid." The girl's eyes widened with hope. Is there going to be a baby?" "Not yet," Amanda said, smiling at the disappointment that flashed across Astrid's face. "But we've started the adoption process for a little boy named Marcus. He's 6, lost his parents last year. He needs a family, and we thought. I'm going to be a big sister." Astrid's shriek of joy sent pigeons scattering from the courthouse steps. Rex barked in response, tail wagging frantically. "When can I meet him? Does he like dogs? Will he share my room?" As the newly formed Carter-Blake family walked toward their car, discussing bedroom arrangements and favorite colors and whether Marcus would like comic books, the city around them continued its rhythm. But for those who'd witnessed their story, the officers who'd learned to question orders that didn't feel right, the citizens who'd seen ordinary courage triumph over corruption, the children who'd watched a family rebuild itself from tragedy, Boston felt a little safer, a little more hopeful. Because Nathan Carter had run into gunfire, not as a soldier or a hero, but as a father and a human being who couldn't walk away from someone in need. And in that simple, devastating choice, he'd reminded an entire city that courage isn't the absence of fear but action in spite of it. That justice isn't just a professional obligation but a personal responsibility. And that love, real love, doesn't end with loss but grows stronger, encompassing new hearts willing to risk everything for each other. The story of the single dad who ran into gunfire would be told in police academies and community centers, in bedtime stories and news retrospectives. But for Nathan, Amanda, Astrid, and Rex, it was simply the beginning of their story, a family forged in crisis, bonded by choice, and protected by a loyalty that no force on earth could break.